I've dealt with power-hungry people before. Comes with the job when you've been a cop for over a decade. I've seen rookie officers get drunk on authority, supervisors who think a badge makes them untouchable, and citizens who throw tantrums the second they don't get their way. But I never thought I'd come home from a long shift only to find my quiet, peaceful neighborhood being run like a police state, by a woman with no actual authority. That was before Karen moved in. The first sign that something was wrong came when I started noticing bright orange violation tags plastered on my neighbors' doors. I thought maybe the city was cracking down on some local ordinance, until I saw the so-called infractions. Mrs. Eleanor Tate, a sweet old woman who had lived here for decades, got fined for wind chimes. Apparently, Karen decided the gentle clinking of metal in the breeze counted as noise pollution. The fine? $75 per day until removed. Then there was Mr. Walter Grayson, a retired veteran who spent his afternoons restoring old cars in his driveway. Karen's self-appointed enforcers barged onto his property one afternoon, demanding he cease all unauthorized automotive activity immediately. When he asked what rule he was breaking, they simply handed him a pink violation slip that read, "Non-compliant vehicle maintenance, disrupting community aesthetics." I started paying closer attention, and that's when I saw them, Karen's private police squad. They weren't actual cops, but they sure wanted to look the part. Black polo shirts with "Neighborhood Patrol" stitched across the chest, cheap walkie-talkies clipped to their belts, and those plastic flashlights you buy at the hardware store. They roamed the streets like wannabe law enforcement, shining lights into driveways at night, interrogating teenagers who stayed out past dark, and, on at least one occasion, following a single dad, Brian Carter, to his door because his kids were drawing with sidewalk chalk. At first, I figured it was just some weird neighborhood watch gone too far. Maybe Karen had a few too many HOA rule books lying around and thought she was doing something useful. But that illusion shattered the day I came home and found a citation stuck to my own front door. Violation, unauthorized vehicle entry, $100 fine. I frowned, ripping it off. What the hell was unauthorized entry? I owned my house. My name was on the mortgage. My car was parked in my driveway, like it had been for years. Then I saw the smaller text underneath. Failure to stop at designated checkpoint is a violation of community law. Fees will increase if unpaid. Checkpoint? What checkpoint? And that's when it hit me, Karen had actually set up her own illegal border patrol. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. But when I saw Karen and her little patrol squad skulking around another neighbor's house that evening, shining flashlights through their windows, I knew this wasn't just some power trip. This was a full-blown turf war. And Karen had no idea she had just picked a fight with an actual cop. I ignored Karen's bogus fine. No way in hell was I paying for some imaginary violation from a woman who had unilaterally declared herself the supreme ruler of suburbia. If she wanted to enforce real laws, she'd have to go through actual channels, ones I would have heard about through my department or the county office. But no official notices came. No city letters. Just that ridiculous pink slip taped to my door like some passive-aggressive HOA version of a parking ticket. I figured that was the end of it. I severely underestimated Karen. A few days later, I pulled into my street after a brutal double shift, barely keeping my eyes open. I was running on nothing but caffeine and sheer willpower, already dreaming about peeling off my uniform, taking a hot shower, and crashing into bed. But as I turned into my driveway, I slammed the brakes. Karen's fake police squad had formed a blockade. Their golf cart was parked diagonally across the pavement, hazard lights blinking. 3 men stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, flashlights raised like they were conducting some kind of tactical raid. Orange cones and plastic barricade tape stretched across my driveway as if they were shutting down a crime scene. And in the center of it all stood Karen, arms folded, clipboard in hand, a smug look plastered across her face. She had waited for me. I exhaled slowly, resting my hands on the steering wheel. I was too damn tired for this. Karen took a step forward, her voice dripping with fake authority. Stop right there. You are in violation of HOA Code 11B, failure to pay a legally issued fine. This driveway is now blocked until you settle your debt. I stared at her. She had to be joking. For a second, I considered just driving through their sad excuse for a barricade. It wouldn't take much to knock over a few cones and a glorified golf cart, but I wasn't about to get into a vehicle-related incident with the neighborhood lunatic. Instead, I turned off the engine, climbed out, and took in the full absurdity of the scene. Karen's squad looked ridiculous, puffed-up wannabe cops dressed in matching black polos with their neighborhood patrol logos, cheap walkie-talkies crackling with static. One of them, a particularly overzealous guy in his 40s, was gripping a ticket book like he expected to start writing me up. I let out a long breath and ran a hand down my face. Look, I said, keeping my voice even. I've had a long day. I'm exhausted. This is my property. That fine of yours is nonsense. Move your toys before this gets embarrassing. Karen's eyes narrowed. She pulled out a laminated sheet from her clipboard, tapping it with her manicured nail. Asterisk asterisk you owe $100 plus late fees, asterisk asterisk this is a recorded enforcement action. If you refuse to comply, we will be forced to escalate. Behind her, one of her self-appointed officers nodded, like this was some kind of standoff with a dangerous criminal. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Escalate? I repeated. What are you going to do, Karen? Call the real cops? Her jaw tightened. I don't need to, she said, lifting her chin. The board has given me full authority to enforce compliance. I sighed. I didn't want to do this. I really didn't. But I was running on zero patience, and I'd already let this go on for too long. So, with deliberate slowness, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge. For the first time since this circus began, Karen hesitated. I held it up just enough for her squad to see the real police emblem. Karen, I said calmly, asterisk asterisk your board does not override state or local law, asterisk asterisk blocking someone's private property is illegal, so is threatening them with a fake police force now. Move. The effect was instantaneous. Her squad blinked in unison, shifting uneasily. The overzealous ticket writer took a step back, another guy nervously adjusted his walkie-talkie like it would somehow save him. Even the dumb golf cart, previously an immovable object of power in Karen's mind, suddenly seemed like a terrible idea. Karen, however, was determined to dig in. I don't care if you're the governor, she snapped, her cheeks turning red. Neighborhood rules must be followed. I lowered my badge. I'll tell you this once, I said, my voice dropping. Move. Now. A tense silence followed. Karen was bristling, her hands tightening around her clipboard, but I could see it, the moment she realized she'd lost. Finally, one of the men in her squad, clearly smarter than the rest, asterisk asterisk stepped aside, asterisk asterisk another hesitated before following his lead, and just like that, the blockade crumbled. I stepped forward, lifting the plastic tape like I was walking through the world's most pathetic crime scene, and made my way to my front door. I turned back once, just to get one last look at Karen. She was still standing there, seething, her face contorted with barely contained rage. Any more harassment, I told her, any more fake tickets, any more attempts to block my property, asterisk asterisk I will involve actual law enforcement. Do I make myself clear, asterisk asterisk? Karen didn't say a word. She just glared at me with enough venom to kill a man, then, without another word, she spun on her heel, hopped into the golf cart, and muttered something to her crew. The pathetic little police force followed, skulking back into the night, tails tucked between their legs. I stood there for a moment, breathing out a slow sigh, shaking my head. What the hell had just happened? But as I turned to head inside, a thought lingered at the back of my mind. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. If there's one thing I've learned in all my years on the force, it's that people like her don't just give up. They double down. And something told me this was only the beginning. I had hoped that putting Karen in her place would be enough to make her back off, maybe even scare her into dropping her ridiculous power trip. No such luck. For 2 days, things were eerily quiet. Karen wasn't patrolling the streets, her little squad had disappeared, and for the first time since she had moved in, the neighborhood actually felt normal again. I should have known better. Karen wasn't retreating. She was planning ***. The first sign of trouble came early in the morning when I stepped outside to grab the newspaper and immediately stopped in my tracks. My patrol car had been vandalized. The entire front hood was covered in a sticky, foul-smelling sludge, some kind of mix between glue, paint, and God knows what else. The windows were slapped with giant, yellow X marks, the kind you'd see on condemned buildings. Taped to my driver's side mirror was a note scrawled in bold red marker. "Pay your fines or find a new neighborhood." I felt my jaw tighten as I scanned the street, my cop instincts kicking in. This wasn't just some random act of vandalism. It was targeted. It was personal, ***, and as I turned my head, I realized I wasn't the only one. Several of my neighbors' cars had been hit, too. Mr. Grayson's old pickup had "No Deadbeats" spray-painted across the hood in neon pink, Mrs. Tate's front door had been nailed shut, the wood splintered from the force. A single mother down the street found an eviction notice, taped to her garage, demanding she leave if she couldn't maintain proper community standards. My neighbor, Mr. Grayson, walked up, his jaw clenched. "Saw a truck last night," he muttered, pointing to fresh tire tracks in the road. "Didn't recognize it. Thought they were spraying for mosquitoes or something. Should have known better." I exhaled through my nose, fists tightening. "Don't blame yourself," I told him. "This was organized. Karen's squad did this." I immediately started documenting everything, snapping pictures of every bit of damage, including the tire tracks that lined the pavement. I wasn't the only one. Within minutes, several neighbors had gathered, murmuring in anger, their frustration finally boiling over. "She's out of control," Mrs. Tate whispered, looking shaken. I was afraid something like this would happen. A single father, Brian Carter, stormed up to me, waving a flyer that had been slipped under his windshield wipers. It read, "Lazy parents breed lazy children. Keep our neighborhood clean and productive." He was fuming. "She put this on my car. My kids saw it. They were crying this morning, asking if we had to move." That was it. That was the moment I knew. Karen wasn't just being petty, she wasn't just power-hungry. She was actively terrorizing people. By midday, the neighborhood had become a powder keg. The word spread like wildfire. People knocked on my door, angry, ready to act. One couple claimed they saw Karen's officers sneaking through backyards past midnight. A local teacher revealed that Karen had plastered signs around her yard calling her a corrupt brainwasher for teaching at a public school. That night, I called an emergency neighborhood meeting. We packed into Mr. Grayson's garage, standing shoulder to shoulder, frustration thick in the air. People were done being afraid. Mrs. Tate, still shaken from her vandalized door, spoke first. "We let this go on too long," she said, voice trembling with restrained anger. "First it was fines. Then it was harassing kids. And now it's threats?" Brian Carter held up the flyer Karen left him, shaking his head. "My kids thought we were getting kicked out of our home. She's got them scared of sidewalk chalk, for God's sake." The crowd murmured in agreement, anger growing by the second. A retired couple in the back spoke up. "Karen's crew tried to fine us for our lawn," the husband grumbled. "Claimed we weren't maintaining a proper aesthetic. I told them we don't even have an HOA. They just smirked and walked away. She wants people scared," I said finally, my voice cutting through the noise. She wants people to fall in line, that's why she sent her little squad to do this. It's about control. The room fell silent, all eyes were on me. People wanted a solution, they were looking at me because I was the only actual law enforcement here. I took a slow breath, nodding to myself. Here's what we do, I said. I've already documented everything. Now, I need every one of you to send me photos, written statements, *** any proof you have, *** if you've been harassed, fined, or threatened, I want your story. Because tomorrow morning, I'm filing a full police report. A low murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. But that's not all, I continued. Karen thinks she's untouchable, that we'll just sit back and take it. We prove her wrong, we go to the city, we demand an official investigation into her fake HOA, her fines, and her patrol squad. Mrs. Tate raised a shaking hand. And if she retaliates? I met her gaze. She won't get the chance. Because if she so much as tries to pull another stunt, I'll make sure she's arrested. The tension in the air broke, people nodded. Some even clapped. The fear that Karen had instilled in them for months was finally turning into something else. Determination. As I left Mr. Grayson's house that night, I looked over at my still vandalized patrol car, the dried sludge a reminder of just how far Karen was willing to go. She had wanted revenge. Now, she was about to face real consequences. She had spent months acting like her fake police force gave her the right to rule this neighborhood, but she had forgotten something crucial. There was an actual cop living here. And she was about to find out exactly how real law enforcement handles people like her. The next morning, I submitted the full police report. I detailed every violation Karen had committed, the vandalism, the intimidation, the illegal fines, and the phony eviction notices. I attached dozens of neighbor testimonies, security footage showing her patrol squad sneaking through backyards, and photos of the damage done to vehicles and property. I didn't just want Karen fined. I wanted her shut down. My captain read through the report, sighed, and looked at me over his coffee. She's got a whole damn operation going, huh? Oh, you have no idea, I muttered. It didn't take long before an official criminal investigation was launched. Karen had finally crossed the threshold from being a nuisance to committing actual crimes. For a few days, Karen kept a low profile, which was rare for her. Her patrols stopped walking the streets. No new fines appeared on doors. It was almost peaceful. But I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to retreat. She was regrouping. And then, she made her biggest mistake yet. Late on a Friday night, while I was off duty, my phone buzzed with frantic messages from neighbors. Brian Carter *** Karen's squad is stopping cars again. Looks worse than before **. Mr. Grayson *** they just flagged me down and tried to take a photo of my license plate. What the hell is this **. Mrs. Tate *** they're out there now. Flashlights. Cones in the road. She's lost it **. I grabbed my badge and my gear. If Karen wanted to play police officer, she was about to get a real law enforcement response. As I pulled out of my driveway, my captain's voice came over the radio. Mark, we got your intel. 2 squad cars are en route. You're clear to join the operation. I gripped the wheel tighter. Copy that. Moving in. We rolled in with our lights off, approaching from multiple angles, keeping the element of surprise. But even from a few blocks away, I could see the flashing hazard lights of Karen's golf cart, the orange glow of cheap road flares marking her illegal checkpoint. Her squad had gone full lunatic mode. They had set up a complete roadblock, blocking both lanes with traffic cones. They were stopping residents, shining flashlights into car windows like this was some kind of border crossing. One of her so-called officers was actually writing something on a clipboard, while another was pointing at a nervous-looking driver in a red sedan. I saw Karen herself, standing in the center, wearing a cheap navy blue polo embroidered with the words, "Neighborhood Patrol," across the chest. She had her arms folded, radiating self-importance, her clipboard tucked under one arm like she was about to issue a Supreme Court ruling. Oh, she was going all in. "All right," my captain's voice came through the radio. "On my count. Move in calm and controlled." My heartbeat slowed. The years of training kicked in. I wasn't just a pissed-off neighbor anymore. This was a tactical operation. 3, 2, 1, asterisk asterisk. I flipped my lights on. Red and blue flashed through the street like a thunderclap. The reaction was instant. One of Karen's goons dropped his flashlight on the pavement, scattering shadows across the houses. Another one literally threw his clipboard into a bush and tried to back away like he hadn't just been harassing a driver 30 seconds ago. Karen's head snapped toward us, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw fear. She turned to her squad. "Hold your ground. We have jurisdiction here." I stepped out of my vehicle, badge in hand, my voice cutting through the chaos. "This operation is over." Karen whirled around, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You can't just... asterisk asterisk you are blocking a public road, detaining drivers without legal authority, and issuing fraudulent fines asterisk asterisk," I continued, voice steady but firm. "This ends now." Karen clutched her clipboard like a life preserver. "This is an official HOA operation." My captain stepped forward, arms crossed. "Your so-called HOA has no jurisdiction over public streets. This is illegal." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but then she realized, asterisk asterisk her squad was crumbling, asterisk asterisk. Two of her officers had already raised their hands in surrender, another tried to step behind Karen like a human shield. And then Officer Calloway moved in, cuffs ready. "Hands behind your back." Karen jerked away, eyes wild. You can't arrest me. I'm protecting the community." My captain shook his head. "You've been terrorizing the community." I could see it then, the exact moment Karen realized she had lost, her face turned pale. Her lips parted like she was going to scream, but no words came out. Click. The cuffs snapped closed around her wrists. Her patrol squad? They were arrested too. One of them actually had the audacity to ask, "We're not really going to jail for this, are we?" "Buddy," Calloway said, securing his cuffs, asterisk asterisk you impersonated law enforcement, detained civilians, and extorted people. "You tell me, asterisk asterisk." The neighborhood had gathered by then, watching the fall of Karen in real time. Brian Carter stood near the sidewalk, arms crossed. Mr. Grayson gave me a knowing nod. Mrs. Tate whispered a quiet, "Thank you." Just before Karen was loaded into the back of the squad car, she twisted her head around, spitting venom in my direction. "This isn't over," she hissed. I met her gaze, calm as ever. "Oh, it's definitely over." She was shoved inside, the door slammed shut. Karen had spent months acting like she was the law in this neighborhood. She thought she could fine, threaten, and harass people into obeying her. But that night, she finally learned the hard way, when you break the real law, there are real consequences. And as the convoy of police cars pulled away, taking Karen and her squad into the legal system they could never manipulate, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. A neighborhood finally free of fear. The neighborhood felt different after Karen was gone. Lighter. Quieter. Free, asterisk asterisk the tension that had hung over us like a storm cloud for months had finally lifted. There were no more fake fines taped to doors, no more clipboard-wielding enforcers lurking in driveways, no more threats disguised as community guidelines. It was over. Karen's arrest set off a domino effect of consequences. The city launched a full investigation into her fraudulent HOA scheme, and it turned out she had been illegally collecting thousands of dollars in fake fines. Her bank accounts were frozen. The HOA board, who had been trying to distance themselves, was suddenly under legal scrutiny. They had allowed Karen to run unchecked for too long, and now they were facing charges, too. Then came the foreclosure notice. When the dust settled, it turned out Karen had been funneling her stolen HOA money into personal expenses, spa days, designer furniture, and even a $3,000 hot tub. When the fraud charges hit, she couldn't keep up with her actual mortgage payments. Within a month, a for sale sign went up in her front yard. The day she moved out, we all watched. No one offered to help. She shoved boxes into a moving truck, her golf cart abandoned in the driveway, a relic of her failed empire, her former patrol squad. They had all taken plea deals and were barred from holding any kind of community enforcement positions ever again. As Karen climbed into her car, this time, no cones or fake checkpoints to stop her, I could feel her rage from across the street. She looked at me one last time, her expression twisted with resentment, but she said nothing. She just drove away. That night, the neighborhood celebrated. We threw a block party, real community spirit, no fake rules, no threats. Mr. Grayson fired up his grill. Mrs. Tate brought out homemade cookies. Brian Carter's kids covered the sidewalks in chalk, drawing superheroes and flowers. No one stopped them. No one would ever stop them again. Karen had tried to rule the neighborhood with fear, but in the end, she was the one who lost everything. Have you ever dealt with an HOA Karen? What's the worst HOA nightmare you've experienced? Share your story below. We need to know who had it worse.